Gabe Gifted Green versus Phil Rowe. We got minus 135 on Gabe Green and plus 115 on the Fresh Prince Phil Rowe. So let's start off with Phil Rowe, who's coming off a very lengthy layoff himself as well. The last time we saw him was in the Contender Series, where he dispatched of Leon Shabazian as a plus 180 underdog. Before that, well, he's been on a little bit of a run now. 7-2 is his current record. Comes out of that Fusion XL gym down in Florida, where we've seen guys like Mike Perry, Jacare Souza, and even Rodolfo Vieira come out of. They have a solid, small, tight-knit gym there, and I'm very impressed with what's been coming out of there as of late. Now with Phil Rowe, he seems like a guy, 6'3", 80.5-inch reach. Crazy that he's able to make welterweight at that weight or at that frame. But he's a very lean dude as well too. He seems a little hesitant on the feet in instances. He seems a little uncomfortable at times, but when he does get into his zone and he's able to clip his opponents, he really gets going and he's able to land some good shots, find the openings in his opponent's striking defense, and really able to put it on him and get them out of there. We saw Leon Shabazian have a lot of success on him in that first round, almost putting him away. Luckily for Phil, he was able to endure that, and then in the second round, put it on Leon himself, and then in the third round, eventually put him out. In the the McKeon fight, that was another guy that he was going up against that was very skinny and very tall, 6'4", an inch taller than him. But that guy looked even more uncomfortable on the feet. And we saw Phil Rowe, land some good shots on him, and then eventually sink in a guillotine choke. I'm trying to find what Phil Rowe is actually really good at. You know what I mean? Like, he's tall for the division. He's lanky. He's more than likely going to have a reach advantage on all of his opponents. But I feel like he's still a little bit green, and that's kind of tough to say for a guy who's 30 years old coming into his 10th MMA fight, especially with that 10th MMA fight being in the UFC. Luckily for him, he's going up against a guy in Gabe Green, who's only 27, who's coming into his 13th fight, and he has such a reach and size advantage over that he could potentially find some success in this fight. However, I feel like Gabe Green is just a little bit more well-rounded at this point in time. We did see him lose a decision victory to Daniel Rodriguez. That was his UFC debut, and that was a very short notice fight for him as well too. So, good on him for being able to survive 3 rounds against Daniel Rodriguez, who's been putting away dudes left and right. Before that, he was on a bit of a win streak, all finishes as well too. I believe he was a CXF champion over there in California, and they do share a common opponent in Leon Shabazian, and both of them were able to dispatch of him via finish. Gabe Green, very unorthodox on the ground with his jiu-jitsu. Very impressive too. Like when he has guys, whether they're in full guard or full mount, he's able to like swing his legs forward in front of them and kind of sweep them and go for leg locks. And he just is very, very like he has a lot of dexterity in his hips and his legs. Is very, very impressive. We didn't see him to get to pull off much of his jiu-jitsu in the Daniel Rodriguez fight, as that was primarily a stand-up affair, but I do think that we saw some good things in Gabe with his striking as well. For some reason, he looks a little bit more comfortable on the feet than Phil Rowe, but he's going to have a 5-inch height advantage to overcome here, as well as a 6.5-inch reach disadvantage. So it's interesting how this fight's going to play out. Now, Phil Rowe obviously been off for a while now. We saw Gabe Green in the summer, so maybe you got to teeter towards Gabe Green a little bit more in terms of just being a little bit more active, and I think that's a huge thing here, especially with Phil coming into the UFC for the first time. Gabe's already done the walk. You know what I mean? Gabe's seen the bright lights. Gabe's been in front of Dana and all that stuff, and so has Phil Rowe on the Contender Series. But this is just another game. Like, you see the UFC logo on the octagon and the UFC logo on your gloves compared to just the Dana White Contender Series, and this just being the fight that gets me in to the UFC. Now you're actually fighting in the UFC. Luckily for him, like I said, he's going up against a relatively newcomer in Gabe Green, who only has 1 fight in the UFC. I lean Gabe in this fight. I just don't know with how much confidence. Like, I don't feel comfortable playing him at that minus 135 range. The line that I do find intriguing, though, as I do think both guys can finish and have been finished in the past, is the under 2.5. And I have seen a couple of my buddies on this line. The under 2.5 is currently around that minus 120 range, but I'm finding a little bit hesitant in terms of pulling the trigger there too. I think Gabe could land on Phil. I think if he takes this fight to the ground, he could definitely make it a tough time for him and eventually pull off a submission. And even Gabe to win this fight via decision or via submission is plus 475, which I think is a solid spot as well too. This fight, all in all, will probably be a stay away other than the under 2.5. But I do think that Gabe pulls it off. I think he'll be live to get a takedown here. I think that will be his path to victory. Try to leg kick his way into the distance and then follow up with a takedown or at least some strikes on the feet. But I think the longer it stays on the feet, the more it could. The more it would favor Phil, as I believe he would do a better job of maintaining the distance and landing the better shots from the outside. However, I'm still leaning with Gabe. I think he gets the fight to the ground. I think he gets his jiu-jitsu going, and I think we see him pull off a submission victory. So I'm going to have to go with Gabe Green. I think he pulls off a first-round submission victory here over Phil Rowe. There's not much confidence from my side on this fight at all. But I do think that this is a fight where the slight favorite is deserving of being the favorite, and I think he's just a little bit more well-rounded at this time. So once again, I'll go with Gabe Green to win this fight via first round submission.